This is the story of Barrhead. It is a town in Scotland. We all live in Barrhead. Barrhead is my home. Barrhead has changed a lot since people first moved here.
There's indications that there have been people in the Barrhead area since very early times, going back 9,000 years. You've certainly got lots of Bronze Age settlement in the area because you've got Bronze Age burial cairns, you've got the homesteads, the hill forts, all the field systems. So we've got a continuous history of occupation going back to the New Stone Age.
These early settlers, naturally they settled along the banks of the Leven or the Kirton, so that what you ended up with was a series of small villages, all stretched along the banks.
The whole of Strathclyde seems to have been a sort of client kingdom during the Roman occupation of Britain. I think that would have introduced a kind of boom period into the economy of this area. I think once the Roman eagle was no longer flying over Hadrian's Wall, you'd get this area being subject to political upheavals and new alliances. In the period at the beginning of Paisley Abbey, the Paisley Abbey Charter, you've got documentary evidence starting for the parish kirk at Neilson, which was already built by then, it was already there. So you had a definite community and a definite parish.
The monks had this vast expanse of ground, which obviously their limited number, they couldn't farm it all. So they were looking for people to come along and help them. And in return, the monks taught them to spin and to weave.
If you were standing on the top of the Craigie looking down over the Leven in the 12th century, I think you'd have been able to see lots of cultivation, lots of animals being grazed. People could weave and make pottery, there would be leather tanning, there'd be metalworking of various types. In the 1590s, there was no such place as Barrhead. By the time that Ainsley was surveying in the area, there is a town of Barrhead, and we can see it marked on his map. I think Barrhead is unusual in being an industrial town. Although a lot of towns became industrial towns, they were nearly all there before industry. And Barrhead is unusual in being the creation of industry altogether. It's not really until the mid-18th century that you begin to get population numbers increasing.
Your textile industry really caught on in a big way because Barrhead was the ideal situation. It had these two fast-flowing rivers which could drive the water wheels, which are the main source of power, and they had these expert weavers who were situated all along the banks of the Leven. So that in 1 2-mile stretch of the Leven alone, there were 6 cotton mills, 7 print works, and several bleach fields.
You had people coming in to the area and they needed to be housed quickly, and the quickest way was to produce houses in rows or raws. Very often they weren't particularly well built, they were built in a hurry and there was never enough of them, so that they very rapidly got overcrowded and you did get slum conditions within Barrhead. Zachariah Hayes was an incomer and he bought over the South Arthurlie print works, and what he did was revamp it and bring it up to date, and it became really quite a successful print works.
He certainly made a go of it. It grew to be the largest source of employment in the town.
In fact, it was one of the last print works to close down. It went on functioning until the 1930s.
By the 1840s, the town was really taking off, and the minister in Neilston parish was the guiding spirit behind the founding of this church. Very soon after, the tendency of Presbyterians to fall out reappeared, and most of the congregation and the First Minister left and founded the Free Church. Round about the 1840s, a large number of Irish immigrants would have come into the town, and that obviously brought the Roman Catholic faith into the town.
Factories provided work, and the work, of course, provided money, and wherever there was money, the people flocked into the area. So that was really how the town come to any great size at all. I think one of the reasons why Barrhead was quite delighted when they became a borough in their own right was it meant that they were a town in their own right. They couldn't be taken over by Glasgow or Paisley, who were always threatening.
If people wanted their town to become a borough at that time, they had to gather information and make a good case. And of course Barrhead did have a lot of successful industrialists who were good at organising their own business, and by extension would be good at looking after the town's affairs. Borough status was granted in 1894.
Zachariah Hees gifted the site on which the council chambers and the Borough Court Hall now stand.
Edinburgh Evening News, Monday, the 11th of January, 1897. The defeat of the Celtic in the first round of the Scottish Cup competition at Barrhead on Saturday has caused a sensation in the west of Scotland. Consternation reigned supreme when the result was confirmed, and accepted, perhaps in Renfrew, where the victory of Arthurlie was hailed with tremendous rejoicing, the disaster was universally deplored.
Just at a time when the textile industry was phasing out, the demand for sanitary engineering was increasing.
John Shanks came to the town as plumbers, and then they gradually built up the business.
And what Shanks did was to develop a non-return valve that could be used in toilets in ships. And the whole sanitary business in Barrhead actually evolved from that. For a long time, Shanks just made brass fittings, and it wasn't until they moved to the works in Victoria Road that they actually made the pottery parts as well.
Well, one of the Shanks was he was introduced to Queen Victoria, and he said, "This is Andrew Shanks." And Queen Victoria said, "Shanks, Shanks. Now, where did I see that name before?" And an old sailor I once met said that you could travel anywhere in the world. There were three things you would always find. First was a Union Jack, the second was a Scots engineer, the third was a Shanks's lavatory.
James Maxton's probably one of the best known residents of Barrhead. He wasn't born here, but he moved to Barrhead at a very early age. I think he was 4, and of course he was exposed to the difficulties that ordinary working class people suffered in Barrhead. At that time, the early years of this century, housing conditions were really poor. The cotton industry had gone into decline. A lot of people were laid off. So there were a lot of people who were suffering very real hardship in Barrhead when Jimmy Maxton was a young man growing up. He was a student at Glasgow University and interested himself early on in trying to sort out the problems for working class people in Scotland.
We suffered very, very badly in Barrhead.
Who could believe that I went to school with my bare feet?
That's right. No running water.
There
were no water and there were no electricity.
We didn't have carpets.
Oh, wooden floors.
Wooden floors or lino.
The hole in the wall.
The hole in the wall. Set in bed.
But good neighbours. We depend on them giving us this and giving us that.
Oh, they helped one another. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my life when I was young.
Because we had good pals.
People very often didn't get paid weekly or monthly, and instead what they got was a wee advance from their employer saying to a supplier, supply so-and-so with goods to the value of such and such. And then when payday came round, very often they had actually spent more than their wages came to, because they were expected to pay interest on the advances that they'd had. The co-op started in order to relieve people. And it was thought that if groups could come together and buy things in bulk, you could make goods and services available to your members at reasonable, fair prices.
Oh, it was a great shop, wasn't it? Could get everything in it. And great stuff.
And you had your book.
Tick.
You got your messages and tick.
The Barrhead Co-op became a huge force for good in Barrhead. They had a women's guild, they had an education section, so that was doing evening classes. They ran soirees and galas.
The two highlights of the year in Barrhead were the cooperative gala and the cooperative jaunt. Very, very daring. We went to Salkits. In those days, travelling was really something. The tram fare to Glasgow was tuppence. Tuppence was something that you couldn't afford.
It was always good fun travelling upstairs in the front of the tram, because you could almost, not that you did, but you could almost speak down to the driver.
Sadly, with the mounting costs, the infrastructure for tramways was becoming very, very expensive, and of course the trams were ultimately withdrawn. A great number of the former tramcar routes were of course virtually taken over by bus companies. My grandfather moved to Barrhead in 1936, purchased the local Barrhead company known as James O'Hara, and they started off with 8 Albions, and the main route as such as it is today is between Barrhead and Paisley. Thus far we have stood the test of time, and we're always very pleased and proud when people automatically associate McGill's with the town.
I used to think one of the saving graces about the Second War, if there were any saving graces about the Second War, was the fact that our main street at that time always looked as if it had been bombed in any case.
When I was growing up during the war, you used to queue sometimes. You queued up at the shop and just hoped the cakes weren't done by the time it was your turn.
Saturday night, you got all titivated up, you know, but you didn't have stockings then. It was this makeup you put on your legs,
tan thing on your leg, and a black thing
and a
up
big
the back
black
for a
mask up
seam.
the back for a seam. That's the way you done it. Flour, it was your powder.
And the suit up the chimney to
do your eyebrows with eye. That was what we done.
Oh, we got the lovely soldiers.
Oh, the cigarettes. And your treat of chocolate that they used to bring back.
Used to put on a date, but say, you bring us your cake of chocolate.
If you were in a non-essential occupation, you were told that you need to find something connected with the good of the country. And one lady who had been, I think she was a school cleaner or something like that, her mother said to her, "You still working in the school?" She said, "No, I've been sent down to work in Shanks's." "Oh, we're going to win the war now." She said, "The Germans were throwing bloody taps at them."
Barrhead Town Council had a committee formed in order to preserve historical points about Barrhead. So I was landed, seeing I was interested in the cinema, with photographing the town. And as you see, this is the results. Mr. Hutchison, who became the provost of the town, he drove the car, and I was perched through the sunroof with my cine camera.
since 40s, of course, everything's changed.
That's
I mean, the housing and everything.
We built houses for special needs. That was massive overcrowding, slums clearance and all the rest of it. A big lot of that doesn't exist now. We have a situation in Barrhead where we could house a person within 4 or 5 months of their marriage and offer them houses while they were still on the engaged list. Now, as you see for yourself, we're into a situation we find it very, very difficult to offer anyone a house. As a matter of fact, we've not been building houses for the past 30 blanket years.
I think in any town, it's the stories that grow up about the people. It's not the buildings or the geography or anything else that make a town. It's the people that live in it.
Barrhead has got a very active population, not all of it, but you've got a lot of societies flourishing in Barrhead, and that, I think, is to do with its history. You do have things like the choirs, and you had the Barrhead players, things like the History Society, and there are lots of other societies in Barrhead. And it seems to me that that's what keeps Barrhead together rather than any kind of political setup. It's the people themselves that want there to be a Barrhead and keep these societies going rather than going to ones in Paisley or Glasgow.
Obviously Barrhead has grown up a lot over the last number of years, 20 or 30 years, because we've had so many incomers. People coming to Barrhead because of the private housing that's been put up, or simply because it's close to Glasgow. But beyond that, there is a community of the original Barrhead people. You tend to find that community is still quite strong and still quite close.
We've been lucky.
Oh, well,
You know, I mean,
can't complain, son. We've
complain.
really had a good life in Barrhead.
Had a good life in Barrhead.
Deadly.
I wouldn't go anywhere else.
No. I had the chance of going different places, but I wouldn't do it.
You had a chance to go where?
I had the chance to go to America and I wouldn't do it. I could have went to Australia. I wouldn't do it. I'm very happy in Barrhead.
Even my mother and father, like Barrhead, see when they were getting older and talking about dying and that, you would say, would you not like to be buried in Ireland? Be it, no, I want to be buried where my family is.
Well, we've finished one century and we've achieved a lot in one century. We're now moving on to another century, and I think that Barrhead will progress and go from strength to strength. There's no doubt about that.
If you look around Barrhead, you'll see there are dozens of sort of small factories all engaged in various different types of productions, and you wonder to yourself which one of them is going to become the next textile mill or the next Shanks. We're into phase 3 now. What the next major industry in Barrhead, if there's going to be a major industry, is anyone's guess. Well, I think Barrhead is here to stay. It will get to a point where the incomers to the town, when their kids grow up, they'll be real Barrhead people. The new Barrhead population are facing new challenges and everything else. But I dare say they'll rise to meet the occasion the same way as they did before.
Barrhead. I was born in Barrhead, my father was born in Barrhead, and I'm saying I'm James Maguire, Esquire, FFB, and FFD means fella fae Barrhead.